With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to this LouieTeeNetwork exclusive limited series, The Reign of Terror, chronicling the 23 years of pure hell Daniel Snyder has put this fan base through. He's gone. We are now in 2016, and Chapter 18 takes us to a season that I just felt like was a total letdown. It was a season of missed opportunities. It's one of my most frustrating and disappointing seasons as a fan in recent memory. You can always look at some of these seasons with revisionist history and we should have done this, we should have done that. 06, Joe Gibbs shouldn't have overhauled everything after the 05 season, bringing in Al Saunders and kind of changing everything. Didn't need to do that. Obviously, there was no 08 Joe. He had retired after 07 because it was such a tumultuous year. It took so much out of him. And so you never really got to follow up and see what it could have been. And it was Todd Collins, for God's sake, right? Like, what were we really going to do? Okay. 2012, Griffin gets injured, so that kind of put a shroud of mystery over what was going to be 2013. We got all in for week one. We know the rest of the story. That was an epic fail and disaster of a season, but I really didn't know what to expect because going into the offseason, Griffin was hurt. 15, I left that season in the playoff loss against the Green Bay Packers feeling like, oh my God. This new defensive coordinator, Joe Barry's got this defense buzzing. We're creating turnovers. We're getting to the quarterback. This Preston Smith kid looks like he's going to be a player for us, opposite of Kerrigan. He's going to give us everything we thought Arakpo was going to give us. And we got Josh Norman in this offseason, so he signed. He never signed his franchise tag, wanting a new deal in Carolina. They cut him loose. They rescinded the franchise tag, and we jumped on it just like we did with Deshaun Jackson when he was released late in the offseason. And so I'm looking at the defense from last year, and, you know, there are always little tweaks here and there. And, you know, I felt like Bruce Allen was the reason that the 2016 season went to hell in a handbasket. Because he wanted to wrestle control back from Scott McCloughan. He was so obsessed with that. He wanted to show, because McCloughan really was presiding over the draft. And so the offseason, the trades, the signings, the releases, that was all Bruce Allen's avenue. And that was his opportunity to show how brilliant of a football mind he had. So we move on from Jason Hatcher and Terrence Pot Roast Knighting. And we go out and we get guys like David Bruton and Kendall Reyes. Like, these are the guys we're bringing in, you know, that we're supposed to be excited about. Duke Iheanacho. These are the types of players that we're bringing in. You know, Garvin was a linebacker we brought in from Pittsburgh. Like, these are the guys we're supposed to be getting excited about. Mason Foster. And I know a lot of you didn't love Mason. He had his moments here, but these are the guys we were bringing in, and we were letting guys leave. And I'm not saying the guys that were leaving were all that great, but they served a purpose. You couldn't run the football on Terrence Pot Roast Knighting. We had a horrendous rush defense in 2016. Our defense was terrible in 2016. And I really don't know what happened other than we started bringing in players that just weren't very good. But I didn't think that the defense had fallen off that much in 1 year that we would go from a really solid NFL defense to one of the worst. We had the worst third down defense in the NFL in 2016. Stop me if you've heard that before. And we couldn't stop a nosebleed, you know, on the ground defensively. Everybody had big days against us on the ground. So it's frustrating to watch because 2016, and I know what he did in 15, and I know what 2016 Kirk was locked in. And I think that was the best Kirk we got in Washington, honestly speaking. And all anybody wants to talk about in 2016 is the Giants' loss at the end of the season and the picks, but that one in particular at the end. And I challenge you to go watch that 2016 season. Tell me Kirk wasn't locked in. Kirk was in the zone, man. If we had a semblance of a defense, That season, and you know what else? It gets lost in that season. Special teams was horrible for us that year. Kickoff returns for touchdowns given up, block kicks, missed field goals and extra points. Obviously, that cost us a game or two. We were horrible on special teams. We were horrible on defense. That's 2 out of the 3 phases of the game. If not for Kirk Cousins in the offense, we don't even win 8 games that year. Our defense was trash. But with all that said, we didn't know that at the time, and we got Josh Norman, and you got all these players on defense, Kerrigan and Preston Smith coming off of an outstanding rookie season. You draft Sua Cravens to add to the defense. Remember, that year was Josh Doxson in the first round. Sua Cravens in the second round. And Kendall Fuller was the crowning jewel. Was the crown jewel of that draft in the third round. Or else that is an epic disaster that year in the draft, if not for Kendall Fuller in the third round. So you add Fuller to this defense. You add Josh Norman. You add Sua Cravens to Chris Baker and Ryan Kerrigan and Preston Smith and Bashad Breeland, who, remember, those first 2 years, as I mentioned, balling. Like, he was playing like an all-pro type corner at times, a Pro Bowl corner, no less. Mentally, that Josh Norman signing impacted him, and I don't think he ever rebounded in Washington. He thought he was the guy. And them going out and signing Josh Norman signified to him that we didn't think he was capable of handling the number 1 corner, role in Washington. Quentin Dunbar was coming along. Dunny was starting to mature as a corner. Remember, we got him as a receiver, and he was starting to make that transition nicely, but they wanted to beef up the secondary. I don't blame them. Norman, that first year, remember, Norman in 2016 was fantastic. Yep, he got beaten man-to-man coverage because that's not what he's supposed to be playing. When, we went up against A.J. Green and the Cincinnati Bengals, he got cooked. When he went up against Des Bryant at times, he got cooked. When he went up against Odell Beckham Jr. sometimes, he got cooked. But he also won his fair share of those battles. And he forced a bunch of fumbles, and he picked off some passes. His biggest game was Cleveland that year. He was getting worked over by Terrell Pryor in that game in the first half, and he got his revenge late in the game with a pick that sealed the deal for us. And Norman was fantastic in 16. That was the only year he was fantastic in Washington. Forcing fumbles left and right. That peanut punch was on full display. And the sad part was he was here for 3 or 4 years, and not a single player took that time with him to say, hey, bro, show me that peanut punch. How do you do it? When do you know when to unleash it? You know how Josh Norman learned that? 1 year with Tillman, right? 1 year with Peanut Tillman in Carolina. 1 year. And Norman took that 1 year, learned that peanut punch, perfected it, and not one single guy in Washington said, hey, man, show me that thing. Yeah. Like that? Like that? All right. Nobody. Only guy that was capable of doing it was Josh. Only guy thinking like that was Josh Norman. Anyway. So I'm going into 16. I'm amped. We getting this Monday night. And the NFL wants Washington. This is the thing. You have to understand. They want us to be good. Anytime there's a semblance of us being good, 5 primetime games, you're starting off the season on Monday Night Football against the Steelers at home. Like, they want us to be good. But we can never get out of our own way. Coming off of a playoff season, I felt like 16 for me is the year that I felt like, hey, and remember, we didn't know what Jay Gruden was. At this point, you got one really terrible year. You got one solid year. They rally late, and Jay knows offense. If nothing else, Jay knows offense. So we don't know. This year 3 is a make or break year for Jay in terms of like which way is this thing going to go. It could go either way. And we start off the season 0-2, and you want to talk about frustrating. The week 1 loss to the Steelers is one of the most memorable losses of the Jay Gruden era, for me in particular. The Steelers coming to FedEx is never a good thing. Bad things always ensue. 2008, they came to FedEx on a Monday night, destroyed us, took over the stadium, terrible towels, the whole 9 yards. The season, was never the same. They come to FedEx Field week 1, and everybody remembers Antonio Brown. First of all, the defense was playing its ass off early in this game. Early. And we had opportunities and we couldn't score. And the frustrating part about this game was the Steelers were just super aggressive. 4th and 1, they're going for the jugular, and they hit Antonio Brown for a touchdown. That was their first touchdown of the game. They hit us on a 3rd down later in the game. Antonio Brown, same play, same result against Bashaud Breeland, who's in great coverage, and it's just not good enough. Touchdown, and that's when he twerked on us, right? And I'll never forget the twerk. I was so embarrassed. Like, damn, he just twerked on us on national television. Oh, man, we stink. You know, and it was the first game of the season. I was just so disappointed because I was so amped for this first game. I was ready to shit all over Pittsburgh. I had a hit out on them. Did not collect. And they came in, beat us up good. We turned it over. We did the shit that we do when we, you know, this is like, we can't handle the spotlight. We don't handle the pressure of living up to expectations. We don't handle that well. We never have. And so that's why all the fans in this fan base always say, I like being the underdog. I like when nobody sees it. But that's loser talk. Because at some point, you have to be good. Everybody knows you're good. And you got to be able to play well in the face of teams knowing that you're good and want to knock you off the mountaintop. You got to find a way to still be good knowing that you're supposed to be good. And we don't. So the next week, you have Dallas at home. Remember, this is rookie season. Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott. And those two blacked out in that rookie season. They snapped. Dallas was the number 1 seed in the NFC. They were kicking everybody's ass. They wouldn't lose but 3 games that year. They were fan-effing-tastic. There's no other way to say it. They went from one of the laughing stocks in the league the year before to drafting 2 players and totally changing the face of their franchise. So we get them not really knowing what Dak Prescott and Zeke Elliott, we knew what Zeke was all about. They spent the number 5 pick overall or something on him. We knew what he was about coming out of Ohio State. We didn't know what the young, 3rd, 4th round quarterback out of Texas, out of Mississippi State was all about, though. We found out very quickly. Dak ate our ass up. We couldn't cover any of their tight ends. And Zeke had himself a good day, and they beat us. And you know what? The defense wasn't good. This was the 2nd week in a row they weren't very good. But those were 2 really good offenses. So I was okay with getting shredded in those games, knowing that we're going to get better. We're not. Every team in the league isn't going to look like this. You're 0-2, though. So this is a really bad start to the season. And in past years, 0-2 is usually a death sentence for us. We don't usually bounce back from 0-2 starts. So what I didn't see coming was this quick little 4-game heater that we were about to, catch and, turn the season around. And it was this stretch of ball where I thought Kirk kind of established himself, kind of found a rhythm and got back to where, because the first 2 games, he was a little uneven. He wasn't bad in the Dallas game, but he wasn't as good as he could, I've seen him play. So you knew we needed to establish some things. We ended up getting a couple of really impactful undrafted guys, Fat Rob Kelly, and Maurice Harris in that year's draft as well. So a couple of undrafted dudes that ended up making the squad and having an impact. And we started to get the ground game going. We started to take some of the pressure off of Kirk, and we started to do the things that we knew we were fully capable of. And you could see it. Like, we're starting to gel. Pierre's getting involved. Deshaun's getting involved. Jordan Reed has already established himself. But I thought this was the coming out party of Jamison Crowder. This particular season, 2016, was when Jamison Crowder said, hey, y'all didn't make a mistake on me. I am who Scott McCloughan thought I was when he drafted me over a guy like Stephon Diggs. And I remember there was a debate after 16. JC Eyes, yeah. Nothing's better than ice, JC Ice. He had gotten so nasty that year, I had to give him a nickname and a theme song to match. So that first game, we finally get off the schneid. Giants are 2-0. We're 0-2. This is not the team you want to see when you're struggling because we don't seem to be able to beat the Giants. And he had a big punt return. He had a touchdown grab in that game. We go on the road. Remember, this is the wide receiver screen to Jamison Crowder in New York. Big play. Like, we don't do these types of things, right? They had us up. They were up 21-9 in that game, dominating us. And we fought. We dug our heels in. We wouldn't go away. And we hung in there. And Kirk throws a beautiful deep ball to Deshaun Jackson that really gave us life. And Jamison Crowder had that big receiver screen on a third and like forever for a touchdown. I remember him just launching the ball into the stands like, ah! I was hyped. And then we just kept scratching and clawing and making plays. And then finally, at the end of that game, first of all, I think Dunny had a big pick in that game. I think he had like a one-hander in that game. And I remember Sua Cravens. That's who it was. I couldn't think. I was blanking for a second. Sua Cravens. Rookie season, right? Eli's trying to throw a little option route over the middle of the field late in the game. About a minute and a half left. I think we're nursing like a 2-point lead or something to that effect. 1 or a 2-point lead. It's been a back and forth game. I'm proud of the fellas for even being in this. Because when it was 21-9, I thought they were about to run away from us. We're 0-2 and they're 2-0. So to even be in a position to win this game felt good. But I knew Eli has done this to us in the past. Go back to 2012 and go look and see what happens when we take a lead late thinking we got something. And Sua Cravens jumps in front of this option route, dives and snags it and picks it off and secures the victory. And I remember just snapping, going nuts, like thinking, hell yeah. Look at this young fella. Look at this football team battling. Look at Kirk out here throwing dimes. All right. That's a big win on the road. You know, and my mind is warped. So I'm thinking Giants were 0-2 in 2007 when we had a chance to bury them, and we let them come to Washington and steal a game they had no business stealing. We were up 14-3 at halftime, and they end up beating us and going on to win the Super Bowl. I'm thinking to myself, we started the season 0-2. They're 2-0. They are, at home. They get on us early, 21-9. We battle back, and we still won late. Could this be? I'm weird. Don't pay me no mind. But that's the shit I was thinking at the time. And I'm not going to lie to you. After this 4-game heater, my mind was saying, hey, they about to validate this bullshit you thinking in your head. So we start mowing teams down. We beat the Giants. We get some big wins in there. Kirk is playing phenomenal football. Phenomenal ball. We beat the Browns. And that was a Josh Norman special there. You get some big wins in there, right? The Ravens win was one of those crazy Jamison Crowder big punt return for a touchdown. Kirk throws a back-breaking pick, but Mosley, who went and climbed the ladder, is a hell of a play by him, fumbles that thing, right? As he's going in for the score, he fumbles it into the end zone, and it's a touchback, and it saves us. We ultimately hold on, win that game 16-10, and we're finding ways to win. We're scoring points. Even when we don't, we're making enough plays. So you look up, and we're a 4-2 ball club. And I'm thinking to myself, whoa, and you go into your bye week at 4-2. You come out of the bye, and I remember saying to myself, we beat the Vikings. We're 5-2. And I remember saying to myself, going into the Sunday night game against the Green Bay Packers at 5-2. Wow. We started 0-2. We're now 5-2. And I think we might have. No. Let me stop right there. So we were 4-2. And Kirk's playing outstanding ball. We've won 4 in a row. And Kirk takes that outstanding play into Detroit. And I remember this was probably one of the most frustrating 2-game stretches of any season. There was that 3-game stretch that I told you was back-breaking as a fan in 2005 that we had. This is right up there with that, because this season shouldn't have even come down to week 17. These 2 games in particular are the ones that stick out like a sore thumb for me. So Kirk plays his ass off. You get a missed field goal from Dustin Hopkins. Stop me if you've heard that before. You get 2 Matt Jones fumbles, including one at the 1-yard line. Now, the other one, we're going to charge it to his account, but Kirk got stepped on. He's trying to hand it off. Never gets the ball. Jones never gets the ball. Fumble. We did stupid shit, but the Lions are, they're the Lions. So you're supposed to find a way to win this game. Anyway, Kirk takes us on a drive late. Read option. Keeps it. Runs for a touchdown. I remember thinking, hell yeah, Kirk. See, they don't know you got wheels, man. They don't know what you about. So you take the lead, and you're thinking, we got these bastards. They need a touchdown. 17-13. They don't need a field goal. They need a touchdown. And we let Matthew Stafford just methodically kick our ass all the way down the field, find Anquan Bolden on a 3rd down, and he gets into the end. I'm like, what are we doing? How do we just lose this game? And you look back at all the missed opportunities, all the missed kicks, field goals, fumbles, all the dumb shit we did, and you still had the lead, and you still blew it. You should be 5-2 right now. The next week, you go over to London, first time playing an international game. You go over there, and it's a shootout between the Bengals and the Redskins. They make their mistakes, we make our mistakes. But at the end of the day, we find a way to get this bad boy to overtime. As many stupid-ass things we did in that game, we're in overtime, and Kirk takes us down the field late, got us in position to win. This is a chip shot field goal from like 30, maybe 34 yards. You got to make this. Dustin Hopkins stinking ass misses. I remember wanting him cut at that. He had already missed a bunch of kicks that year. He missed some kicks the year before. I wanted him gone. At that moment, you're heading into your bye. Bring some kickers in here. Sick of this shit. So you tie that game and you're 4-3-1 heading into your bye. For what? We should be 6-2. Could you imagine what 6-2 would have felt like, knowing that we came out of the bye, beat Minnesota at home, and then showdown with Aaron Rodgers at the crib on a Sunday night, that we would ultimately win? Could you imagine starting the season off 8-2? Because we had that opportunity after losing the first 2 games of the season. You beat Detroit, which you should have. You beat Cincinnati, which you should have. You come out of the bye, you beat Minnesota. You're 7-2, heading into a massive showdown with Aaron Rodgers on Sunday Night Football at 7-2. Let that shit sink in. I remember thinking, why are we even 5-3-1 heading into this game? We should be 7-2. And we proved it that night. And if you ask me, I've always said this. The apex of Kirk Cousins in Washington was on that November night in week, what number was that? 11? On a Sunday night against the Packers. That was the apex of Kirk Cousins in Washington. He couldn't have played a better ball game than he played that night against the Green Bay Packers. And remember, you're out-dueling Aaron Rodgers. Howling wins that night. And Rodgers is coming in here, and this is prime Aaron Rodgers, right? This is Aaron Rodgers out of the pocket, throwing dimes. He would later fillet the Cowboys in the playoffs that year, and single-handedly put the Packers on his back to the NFC Championship, where they got disposed of by the Atlanta Falcons. They were just too much. But Aaron Rodgers was in his bag that year. I don't think he won MVP. I think Matt Ryan won MVP that year. But if it wasn't for Matt Ryan having an out-of-body experience, it probably would have been Aaron Rodgers. He was that damn good. So for him to come to FedEx, our defense can't stop a damn nosebleed. For Kirk to out-duel him, Kirk was throwing dimes that night. Kirk was in his bag that night. Kirk was under duress. He was finding dudes. Kirk was manipulating the pocket, finding dudes. Kirk was going heavy play action fake, standing back there and then throwing 40 yards down the field, diamond dudes. Kirk was in his bag. Some of those throws, the one to Pierre, the one to Jamison Crowder, some of these throws, you go, yeah, Kirk, you locked in, bro. You on another level right now. I'm on a new level. He was on a whole new level. That was the best of Kirk Cousins. That was Apex Kirk. The following week, Thanksgiving, this is a massive matchup. Could you imagine what that game could have been? We were already touting it at 6-3-1 as a massive game, the biggest Cowboys-Redskins game in recent memory. Could you imagine if it was what it was supposed to be? 9-1 Dallas taking on 8-2 Washington for the right to call yourselves first place and leader in the clubhouse in the NFC East. Could you imagine what that game would have felt like if we would have did what we were supposed to do and not drop that game in Detroit, not tie that game over in London, and we're sitting there at 8-2? That's what it should have been. And Kirk was ready for the challenge. He was up to it. Unfortunately, Dustin Hopkins wasn't. He missed 2 kicks in that game. Unfortunately, don't ask the defense what the hell they were doing. Because they couldn't stop any goddamn thing in that game. It didn't matter who it was, we were getting worked over. But Jordan Reed, who had, I think, injured himself earlier in the game, he wouldn't let us die. Kirk wouldn't let us die. Vernon Davis, who we signed in the offseason, that was one of the better moves, that Bruce Allen made during his tenure here, was bringing Vernon Davis on board. And Vernon Davis was huge because Jordan Reed missed games in 2016 with some injuries, and Vernon Davis stepped up and was massive that year. And that's why we ended up signing him to that long-term deal to make sure he stayed in Washington for the foreseeable future to finish out his career. He was spectacular in that season, and we don't survive, honestly, with the injury to Reed. We don't survive without Vernon Davis. And Kirk was throwing BBs in that Cowboys game. Unfortunately, he didn't have any help. Defense was ass, and by that time, we had injuries to the defense, and we just weren't very good. And we didn't have any talent, and it showed. Teams were walking the football up and down the field on us routinely on a weekly basis. So, as disappointing as it was losing to Dallas, you had a bounce back game. And you know, I talked about those 2 games, Detroit and Cincinnati in particular, but there were 2 more games that really stick in my craw. All anybody wants to talk about is the Giants game at the end of the season where you win and you're in. But there's so many games. Here's another example. You go on the road against a bad Arizona team after that Thanksgiving game. So not only do you lose to Dallas, but you got 11 days to lick your wounds, sort of this pseudo bye late in the season. You can always use it. And Arizona on the road, you know, they suck. They're like 4-6 or whatever. You got to beat them. They're not a good football team right now. You have to go there and win. And defensively, I thought it was the worst tackling game of the season for our defense. We were atrocious in that game. And we gave the Cardinals life. We gave them confidence. We made them feel like they were equal to us. And they weren't. They were inferior. But we made them feel like they were equal. And they went out and they beat us. And I remember late in that game, they came with an all-out blitz. And Kirk had Jamison Crowder open for a walk-in touchdown. And Kirk throws it off balance. And I don't really know whose fault this is. Is it Jamison Crowder's fault? I thought it was a bad pass by Kirk. It could have been Jamison Crowder's fault. But whatever the case may be, they came with all-out pressure. We ran a beautiful switch route. And Jamison comes under on a slant. The inside receiver comes outside on like a rail route, like a wheel. And Jamison catches that. He walks in the end zone. Patrick Peterson ends up catching a pick because Kirk just missed him horribly. I really don't know what the hell was going on there. If Kirk thought he was going to stop. It was an option route. Kirk thought he was going to stop at the sticks because all we needed was 4 yards. Jamison took it up the field, and it was just miscommunication is my guess. But Patrick Peterson, who was 5 yards behind Jamison Crowder, if he hits Crowder on this slant, he walks in, and we're going to win this game. Or we were trailing by 8, I think. So we needed a 2-point conversion. We probably wouldn't have got the shit anyway. But I would have loved to have seen the opportunity be presented to us. You can't have that loss. You just can't. You got to find a way to beat Arizona. We lose that game. 2 weeks later, you bounce back, you win a game. Then you go to Carolina, or Carolina comes to us rather on a Monday night, and they're not good. The Panthers, they're suffering from that Super Bowl hangover. You know how it goes when you don't win the Super Bowl. That next year you struggle. They were going through that, and they show up with a losing record late in the season on a Monday night, and our defense once again horrible. Our offense can't put the ball in the end zone. We had ample opportunities, but the defense was the culprit again. The special teams missed another kick. Dustin Hopkins are like, why is he still here? Get him out of here. And we let Carolina come in there and beat us. It was so disgusting and so disheartening. Like, seriously, stop. I remember saying, stop putting us on Monday Night Football at home. And we had 3 primetime games that year, all of them at home, and we only won the Green Bay game. I was so over it. That one you can't do that. If you're serious, you can't do that. You can't let the Panthers come into your house and beat you. You can't do it. They're not a good football team. You go to Chicago, we beat the brakes off of the Bears. So much so that Jay's favorite running back, Mac Brown, gets in and gets some work late in the game and bust off a big run. We beat them up 40-something to 20-something. Like, it wasn't even close. We had our third team in at the end of the game having some fun. So that was one of the fun games of the season. But that set up and set the stage for you win and you're in week 17. The Giants have nothing to play for. The Cowboys have already clinched the division, as I mentioned, at 13-3. The Giants are 11-4 coming into this final game. They don't need it because they can't win the division. So they're not going to rest their starters, which is what would have happened in today's NFL. We wouldn't have seen Eli Manning and Odell Beckham and all those guys. We would have seen their B team. But they played their A team, but they didn't game plan for the game. They didn't do anything extravagant. They were just running the football. They weren't really looking to... They were like, if you want to go to the playoffs, go. We're not going to stop you. We're not going to lay down for you, but we're not looking to put up much resistance. If you want the playoffs, take it. And you remember what happened that week, the week of practice leading up, that Deshaun was disgruntled, Pierre was acting up, and it wasn't a great practice leading up to that game. There was a lot of turmoil, festering, and you saw the end result. And people will always put the blame on Kirk. The defense, we didn't have the ball on offense in that game in the first half. They let the Giants rush offense, run it down our throats, eat up most of the damn first half clock. We never had the ball. It was disgusting to watch. And then we're down 10-0, and we battle back. I think we get a Jordan Reed touchdown, and we end up taking the lead. I think 13. I think it was 13-10. No, they were up 13-10. We had cut into the deficit at 10-7 with the Reed touchdown. I think it was Jordan Reed touchdown. I might be tripping. And then it's tied up at 10. They take the lead. We get the ball late. So first of all, Maurice Harris slips on a comeback route. Stop me if you've heard this before, and the ball gets picked off. And everybody's charging that to Kirk's account, obviously, because it's always Kirk's fault. No, Maurice Harris, come out of your goddamn break. And that was a well-thrown football, too. That's a catch down inside the 10-yard line, not a pick. The last pick was on Kirk. He could have ran for the first down. I thought he should have just hit Jordan Reed on the shallow cross. I don't know what he was trying to do, but he got picked off by Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, and that sealed it. And we lose that game. I think they called a lateral late at the end or something. It ended up being like 18. What is it? It had to be like 19 because they scored a touchdown to 10. But all anybody remembers is Kirk choking in the biggest spot. But it was the defense. It was a collective effort. It was the defense not stopping the Giants enough times and giving the offense opportunities. And no, the offense wasn't playing well. And again, a lot of that falls on the shoulders of the coaching staff. They were not prepared. They did not have a great week of practice. There was turmoil, a lot of stupid shit going on when you're playing for your season. But even with that said, you got to find a way. Just like you got to find a way to beat Arizona. Just like you got to find a way to beat Carolina at home. You got to find a way to win that game, and we didn't. And we finished the season 8-7-1. It was the first time we had finished back-to-back winning seasons in who knows how long. And unfortunately, it didn't result in a playoff berth, and it should have. That season had a chance to be like Giants were finished that season at 12-4. Dallas finished at 13. That season had a chance to be Dallas at 13-3. The Giants at 11-4 or 5, and Washington at 11-5, something to that effect. That season should have been something like that, and we should have been in the playoffs. Not 8-7-1 and missing out on the postseason play. That's bullshit. And you want me to tell you what 2016 did? It changed the fortunes of this franchise, and it really altered the path that we would go on moving forward, because Jake Gruden was never the same as a coach after that season. He never was the same. He never came close to duplicating the success of 15 and 16. He never came close. 7-9, 7-9, and then he gets fired. Like, he never came close. Kirk Cousins isn't leaving if we go 11-5. They're going to pay him that offseason. Remember, he wanted to be paid after the 15 offseason. He was playing on his first franchise tag, the first of two, and he would have gotten a long-term deal if we go 11-5. If Dustin Hopkins isn't missing kicks, if Matt Jones isn't fumbling left and right, if the defense isn't ass-tastic in the worst third down defense in football and giving up 30 points seems like every other week, we go 11-5. Kirk's signing a long-term deal here. Who knows what happens to Jay Gruden as a head coach? Who knows if Pierre and Deshaun want to leave after that? You go 11-5, you make the playoffs. Maybe those guys want to stay. Maybe they don't. Maybe we don't want them back because they were too much of a headache. Maybe that's the case. I don't know, but I can tell you that things are totally different if you're 11-5 instead of 8-7-1 and miss the playoffs. But again, football gods wouldn't allow it. Wouldn't allow any sustained success here. And again, I get it. That's why this series is called The Reign of Terror, because Daniel Snyder's black cloud hovered over it. And it's not always just Daniel Snyder. It's the decisions that he makes. He's responsible for bringing Bruce Allen here and then letting Bruce Allen run amok. And remember, in 2016, we started hearing rumblings and grumblings about Scott McCloughan, alcoholism, unprofessional, and all of this stuff. So that stuff was running rampant too. So you bring Bruce Allen here, he's your mess. So all of this is tied to Dan Snyder, one way or the other. 16 was a season of missed opportunities, and it's one of my most disappointing as a fan. That takes us to 2017. Kirk's on his second franchise tag. You start the season off like gangbusters. There's Terrell Pryor. There's so much excitement. Yay! That went nowhere fast, and we'll talk about that. And that's where I leave you as we end Chapter 18, 2016 season of The Reign of Terror, chronicling the 23 years of pure hell Daniel Snyder has put this franchise through. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. Louie T.